menace. And also, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Of course, Renato had a pretty strong suspicion that Lapino had betrayed the rebellion. But could Renato really leave an old friend to the Ravens? Every child knew about the Sky Ripper. The Transcendent Emperor had buried its pieces deep. And then, this Emperor's horrific sacrifices had brought it back to the surface. Renato wasn't exactly sure how to use the legendary weapon. But surely, there must be some way to do it without provoking another catastrophe. Had he, somehow, summoned the long-lost components of the legendary weapon out of the deep places of the Earth? It was more than Renato could fathom. But if he could find a legendary weapon, he would use it. As he set foot on the island, Renato couldn't help feeling a bit curious. Was Lapino still waiting to be rescued? No. He was probably drinking champagne with the Ravens. Did ravens drink champagne? Did rabbits? Renato felt oddly thirsty, come to think of it. Why had he chosen the Sky Ripper? Renato never made plans that required constant vigilance. He was a hero. He didn't think too much. He just went with his gut and hoped it all worked out. The Sky Ripper was a long shot. He'd have to devote himself to it. No side journeys, no rescuing old friends. That was against his nature. Could he stick with it? Ooh, Renato loved to improve his gear. "Say goodnight, Gracie," said Renato, wondering who Gracie was. The people who had built this castle, did they even know what monstrous weapon lay hidden within their walls? The Sky Ripper could destroy anything it touched, or so the legend said. As the Transcendent Emperor had fought the Lost Gods, thousands had died. But Renato had been through wars. The only merciful war was a short one. been his mistake before, thinking he could win a battle of wills with an ancient evil all by himself. He had to be cleverer than that. Or braver. Or something. It was time for a little exploration. Sometimes, Renata really hated inanimate objects. Smell any better dead, Renata thought. These things really slice like ham. I guess now I find out what's next, he thought. Time to die, he thought. And it was.
Renato loved puzzles, except when he couldn't figure them out. On the other hand, if there was a puzzle, it was probably meant to keep people away from something good.
Welcome to Earth, Renato told the corpses. It was something he'd seen in a play once. There it was. Skyripper's armature. The stuff that dreams are made of. Engineers' dreams, anyway. The device was intricate. No one alive had the skill to make a thing like it. How was it part of a weapon at all? He'd have to ask a scientist. But first, he'd get the second piece. Skyripper had a heart. A core that had come to rest on the next island. Well, there was another island he could reach. Zenobia had just invaded it with her father's Raven battalions. She must be encamped there still. But fighting Zenobia now, that made no sense at all. He'd already sacrificed one friend to get this armature, was it? He didn't need to hurry to face her. She would find him. Renato asked himself why he changed course to confront Zenobia. He'd no idea. Sometimes he would just do things, and he could never figure out why he'd done them. Usually, they worked out. After all, he was a hero. The truth is, though, he wanted to see her, wasn't it? It had been a dozen years since Swordfu School. He'd followed every rumor about her, every scrap of news. Not that he still loved her. After all, she was his enemy. No, it was solely because know your enemy. But it would be great to see her. Even if they faced off across sword points, as they'd done so many times at school. The world was a less interesting place without her. There had to be something useful in these things, didn't there? Renato wondered who was leaving chests of sword crafting supplies around. He wanted to thank him.
was a workbench when you needed one. Oh, never mind.
Firewalls only let you through if they think you're hot enough.
He couldn't do worse with Zenobia than he'd done with the core, could he?
Well, the eyes have had it.
Renato wasn't entirely sure how he was going to capture Zenobia. She'd be expecting him. And he didn't have Lapino to cook up a clever plan. Why was it again that he hadn't got the core? Maybe because the results tended to be disastrous. These streets were familiar. The Swordfu school was closed now, but he had been down that street 1,000 times. He knew that pub. He knew that alley. He knew the alley behind it much too well. No wonder Zenobia had chosen to invade this island herself. Renato slinked through Zenobia's ship, making no sound at all. Where were her guards? Finally, he reached her bedroom. She was curled up on her bed. Oh, he'd forgotten how beautiful she was. How sleek, how soft. He tapped her on the shoulder with his sword. She vanished. And he suddenly noticed he couldn't move except his mouth. In fact, soon he couldn't keep his mouth shut. He told Zenobia everything. Skyripper, the Iblistone, even where the secret rebel base was, until he was hoarse. It was some kind of truth spell. A talky truth spell. She called her father by Farspeaker Toad and filled His Majesty in.
But why didn't he get the core?
Croaked the Farspeaker in something like His Majesty's croak. Because I missed you, darling. Renato grinned.
He doesn't even know why.
Frowned Zenobia.
That makes no sense. It's a trap.
Shouted the Emperor.
I'll meet you at the outpost, and I'll bring my interrogators.
If Renato came face to face with the Emperor, maybe he could assassinate him. But maybe it would be smarter and safer to turn Zenobia against her father. You're lying, she said. Somehow you're lying. The spell hadn't worn off yet. He had to tell the truth. The trick was in making sure she wouldn't believe it. The core is perfectly safe, he said.
And he tried his hardest to sound sincere.
So is the Iblistone. In fact, I was trying to get them myself. Fine then, interrogators it is, she said angrily. I gave you a chance. The Emperor's interrogators were not especially gentle, even by Weasel standards. Fortunately, Zenobia had locked him in the guest quarters on her ship, and she'd forgotten it had a toilet that, like all skyship toilets, could be vented into the abyss. This was not the sort of slippery fox he wanted to be. But just as they were about to land, he threw the latch, wrinkled his nose, and leapt through the open latrine. It was a short, safe landing. At least this part of the Nexus hadn't changed too much. Zenobia had been taking him to the Imperial outpost. She'd never expect him to go there by himself. Well, maybe she would. You never knew with her.
Space. That could come in handy in a pinch.
Bernardo knew Zenobia, and Zenobia knew him. She'd suspected a trick. Now he'd vanished. She would probably guess that was his plan all along. Perfect. Maybe she wouldn't use the Sky Ripper. At least not without taking it to the scientists at the observatory first. Meanwhile, the Emperor would be coming to the outpost personally. This could be good. What did you do if one of these platforms stalled? Renato was face to face with the Emperor's bodyguard. They looked very tough, but the Emperor held them back.
Oh, where's my daughter?
And how would I know that? Renato grinned at him.
She lured me here so that you could kill me, didn't she?
Ah, don't be ridiculous, said Renato, trying his best to sound convincing. She loves you.
Oh, I knew it. The rabbit told me I couldn't trust her.
The Emperor hopped out the door. His phalanx of bodyguards retreated carefully. Renato heard someone call, "Arrest her!" as they left. Well, that's a job well done, thought Renato. Now the fleet would be in all sorts of disarray. But maybe he could find her in the mountains. She always used to go to the mountains to hide from the world. Maybe he could even turn her against her father. Or maybe he could reap the benefits of the chaos he had sown. It was time to report to the Rebel Council, and then launch the attack on a divided and very confused Imperial fleet. Renato was very proud of himself. He'd told the Empire everything, but now they didn't believe anything, and it looked like the Emperor didn't trust his daughter anymore either. There were some advantages to having a slippery reputation, weren't there? Renato wondered if he'd really fooled the Empire. He didn't know soon enough. If the skies darkened with 1,000 dropships, then he'd know the Empire believed his map of the rebel base's secret location. They certainly seemed to be looking for it. There were ravens everywhere. But where weren't there ravens these days? Of all the artisans he was creating employment for. Truly, he was a job creator. He missed her. Not Zenobia. Hypatia, the kid's mother. Renato had never thought he'd date a librarian. He'd always figured himself for the barmaid type. But then, he'd never figured the library of Ubar would have comic books, or that Hypatia would know anything about them. He missed her. Maybe the Emperor would attack Zenobia. The Ravens, divided into two armies, would slaughter each other. Then the rebellion could just show up and claim victory. The Council would be overjoyed that Renato had given away all their secrets. I need more materials, thought Renato.
This chest was filled with reprints of the entire Sandman series. Reprints? God, what was the point of collecting those? Ooh, and there was something else. The rock felt hot in his hand. He could feel its secret power. See? It was actually very fine weather, except for the occasional shower of ravens. And no one was burning the ruins down with the mighty power of a god's eye. If the Empire believed anything he'd said, they certainly weren't showing it. To everything, there is a season. He turned over and died. Raven can't fly. Oh, nada. These things could really use a hand. long stairs. So he was close to the rebel base. He was on fire. So far, so good.